All right, everybody, welcome back. This is another episode of Strange Planet Podcast. And in today's episode is basically an entire reaction to Wednesday's first GOP presidential debate. And there was 8 candidates up, and they're all running for president. And there was a couple of parts during it where I almost felt like Jerry Springer was going to come out, to be honest, with all the shouting and everybody ignoring the buzzer and not following directions. But before we get into too much detail about that, what are your guys' take overall for right now on that GOP debate?
All right, out of all the candidates there, I was thinking that one of the candidates that came out strong was Chris Christie. He had a couple of moments that I was like, all right, maybe this is one of the conservatives that really have their head on straight. But as for that, let's see. Pence had an interesting showing. Haley seemed to be not too bad. But beyond that, it was like same rhetoric. Although I think his name is Ramaswamy.
Ramaswamy. Yeah, Vivek.
Ramaswamy. Yeah.
I'll just call him Vivek from now on because it's easier to say. But
Vivek, yeah, it's probably right.
I was just shortening it to Swami, trying to get
Vivek, Swami. Let's go with that.
His first, coming out was rather interesting. I was like, all right, this seems interesting. Let's see what he has to say. But as the debate went on, he certainly became like my least favorite of them all. But it was a nice show. I mean, I wish I had popcorn.
All right, well, my take on it is okay, so first and foremost, all of the Republican candidates are disqualified. They all, in one shape or form, except Donald Trump, except for Christie. However, Chris Christie cheerleaded for Trump during his presidency and is only now opposing him now that he's running for president. So what I want to say is all of these candidates are disqualified for bad judgment. Okay? Mm. There was information out there when he was running for president in 2016, when Trump was running for president, right? We knew he had reckless relationship with the Constitution, with laws, with the rule of law. He didn't respect any sort of decorum. We knew what kind of president he would be. And lo and behold, he almost took down our entire constitutional system when he led the January 6th insurrection. So, in my opinion, all of these candidates, if you supported Trump at any point in time, you are disqualified because you have terrible fucking judgment. And we told you that this would happen. We told you. And you didn't believe us. So anyone that foresaw that Trump would be a terrible fucking president is more qualified than anyone on that stage.
It's true.
Now, with that out of the way, Chris Christie, he's trying to redeem himself by saying, Trump was bad. Okay? That is a good thing. I'm not going to sit here and say that, okay, he should continue cheerleading for Trump. No, he came around. And sure, it's for political purposes, but he's speaking the truth about Trump for the most part. Nikki Haley also is speaking some of the truth about Trump. Again, she was his Secretary of State. She served under Trump and praised Trump continuously throughout his presidency and after. And only now, when she's running for president, is she taking a stance against him. So I just want to say that Tim Scott, he may sound semi-sane, but brother, please. How many times are you going to say you have a single mother, and grew up in poverty? He said, I don't, if I drank if I drank, every time he said that during the debate, I'd be on the floor right now, okay? We get it. You grew up in poverty, you had a single mother. We get it.
Right?
There was a couple.
But he was also a cheerleader for Trump. What's that?
There was a couple of points there I could have swore he was ready to cry. There's words started getting a little shaky at the end of him. Is he about to cry? Are you serious right now?
Probably the
No,
nerve.
but you know who also had a single mother? Obama. But he
Right.
didn't tell that story every time he fucking got a chance to speak at a debate.
Yeah, it's like we get it. We heard you the first 9 times. Like, how about some policy? How about some procedures? How about, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the quintessential part of the debate was when one of the moderators asked, a show of hands, how many people believe that climate change is man-made? I'm paraphrasing here. And before I think maybe one candidate started raising his hand, but before anyone really got a chance to respond, fucking Ron DeSantis says, "We're not children. We're not going to raise our hands, blah, blah, blah." Like, come on, it's a simple question. Either you believe climate change is man-made or you don't. And I think Vivek Ramaswamy said that he doesn't believe that it's man-made. He believes it's a hoax and a liberal perpetrated hoax.
You're right. He did say that.
You know what? I'll give him credit for one thing. He's batshit insane, but he took a stand and he answered the question. The other Republicans, except for, I remember Nikki Haley, she did say that climate change was real and that they need to address it. But the other Republicans just cowered and avoided the question altogether.
True.
So I think that was, the telling moment of Republicans. That and the fact that everyone wants to do away with the Department of Education.
I was going to get to that, but you're right.
Everybody said that shit.
Like the Republican Party wants to get rid of a department whose purpose is to ensure that American children are educated. Like, I'm sorry, but that is just telling about the state of the Republican Party. They want a dumb population. They already have the dumb voters, but they want a dumb population.
You're 100% right.
They want everyone to be on the same playing field in terms of education.
You're 100% right, because when they asked about, the whole crisis with the education, I want to know how removing the Department of Education is going to fix that. How?
Well, they think that the states can do a better job.
Well,
yeah.
What their model
what
that they're
proof
looking
of that
at
would
is,
they have?
Well, here's what they're talking about. They're talking about taking the money out of the public school systems, putting it all basically into private, not necessarily paying the schools outright themselves, but giving the money to families to have them choose their own schools. The problem with that is any areas that don't have money are not going to have school options that are sensible.
Right.
It is definitely going to be a pay to play fucking system from kindergarten all the way through college.
Exactly.
Yeah. So rich kids in rich areas are going to get good education. The rest are not going to get educated.
Exactly.
Because there's no funding for the schools.
Thus not fixing the problem.
And it's kind of funny
it's
that
making the problem worse because
exactly.
you won't have schools at all in some areas.
Yeah, like I don't get it. Like, how is that? Like, it just doesn't seem feasible in any way that would be an action to take to fix this problem. You know what I mean?
Schools and public education is a public service that we kind of established at the beginning of this country. Thomas Jefferson, big proponent of public education. And, those are that's like a foundational thing that a country does, or at least a first world country does, is we take it upon ourselves as a country to say that every child deserves a quality education. They deserve the right to know about the world and know how things work and to have a basic rudimentary education about math and science and English, right? These things are crucial to a functioning society, and taking away that right as a matter of a state providing those things, guaranteeing those things to children. Now, is the public education system perfect in all places? No. Obviously, some states do it better than others. Obviously, some areas do it better than others.
Right.
That also kind of tracks with the wealth of the individual area. Wealthier areas can hire better teachers, and better teachers can teach students better. And they have smaller classrooms, which they can give students individualized attention more than overcrowded classrooms. They can provide students with more resources, computers, books that are up to date. These things are provided in part by the Department of Education funding, but in large part it depends on the property taxes of areas. And so if you live in a shitty area that can't collect massive property taxes, then you're not going to have the funding to attract good teachers. So we essentially have a system where it's public education, but it's also has some semblance of private education in the sense that capitalism and sort of which area is wealthier determines the educational outcomes of the students. And I think the Republican plan in eliminating the Department of Education, we're just not going to have any pretense of, trying to help out areas in which the educational or the funding isn't adequate to support education. Now, you can say that, oh, well, wealthy people, work hard for it, blah, 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 they deserve it, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? I think as a kid growing up in America, you are a blank slate. You deserve every fucking chance to succeed in this country, regardless of, what area you were born in, regardless of, your parents' wealth. Every child deserves the right to a quality education. And I don't see how removing federal funding accomplishes that.
I 100% agree. And when the whole concept of schooling and stuff came up, I was instantly thinking about DeSantis's book banning. So I'm like, wow, this is probably not a topic for this guy. That's for sure. Because he's...
Oh, he brought it up.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Of course he did. But like, look at the actions that this guy's done for his own state already. So I was kind of like, wow, okay. This is...
Yeah, and Florida is already not known for being the smartest state.
Oh, you got that right.
It seems like he's doubling down on that reputation there.
For real.
I had some notes taken, and his points on education was we need to educate, not indoctrinate. That's what he feels like. That's what he says is what's going on now, is that the school system now is indoctrinating our kids. So it's basically another way of saying no wokeness. He also talked about removing critical race theory and gender identity, and this is all about the Constitution. And it was kind of weird because that had nothing to do with education. But he talked about, we need to teach our kids about the Constitution. So, okay, what kind of education the Constitution are you talking about? I have a feeling that it was weird how everybody was just like, yes, defund the Department of Education. And even Swami was like going further than that, defund all these other fucking places. I feel like they're looking to graft that money.
So, like, when it comes to, like, critical race theory, do you guys know what critical race theory is?
Go ahead. Actually, even for the viewers, give us the textbook definition for it so even the viewers know it.
Right. So this is a buzzword that conservatives like to throw around to make people angry. But what critical race theory is it's sort of an intellectual approach to the history of race and racism in this country. And it says basically that race is not really a natural or biologically grounded feature of human beings, that it's socially constructed, which science will tell you is true. There's no races are just made up.
Right.
It's a made up thing. Now, there are people with different characteristics, different skin colors, skin tones, or whatever. But the genetic makeup of people with those skin tones, that's just looking at the surface level of human beings. And there are more characteristics in terms of genes that people share across all quote unquote races than there are of characteristics that are within races. So it's a theory that says that, this construct, this social construct that we have a race is artificial. And it is. Before slavery, before the onset of slavery, humanity across the globe didn't really have a concept of race. Yes, some people had darker skin than others and different skin tones and whatever. They came from different regions, but they had no concept of race, this thing called race. And so critical race theory says that this construct, this social construct of race, was created and has been detrimental to certain groups of not only Americans, but people across the globe, but primarily it's focused on America. And I don't see how that's not true. Scientifically, like I said, if you look at the genetics of human beings, people of different races can share more, or they do share way more similarities in terms of their genes than they do with people of the same race. But it's just that humans are so focused on outward appearances that they can just classify people as, oh, you're white, you're black, you're Asian. Like, they put people into categories and groups.
Right.
And those things are socially constructed. Now, a lot of conservatives actually might share that view. Oh, like race is made up. But what critical race theory recognizes is that this thing called race has been used historically and at present to categorize and classify people and discriminate against people, and that this has had a detrimental effect on people, both economically and psychologically, socially. It has had negative effects on some people because of this social construct that was made up called race. And I don't think that examining history through that lens is a harmful thing. It is a useful tool to look at how the present situation of race in this country has come to be.
So, in layman's terms, it's basically teaching that we're all human beings, and
Correct.
where you come from means nothing, because basically we all came from the same place in the first place anyway. We just happen to take different paths along our evolution as a species.
Basically, we're all still human beings,
and
Homo
the,
sapiens. In the
right,
end.
and the outward appearances of people should not be a sort of way to categorize people.
Wish there was a way to see someone's character. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
If
I mean,
everyone
it's harder. Like, as humans, we're sort of biologically programmed to like visualize things, and our eyes are highly developed, and we see things and identify them, and it's harder to not be tempted by that easy categorization and to look beneath the surface at what other things make up a person that are shared across races.
Yeah, it should really be about the character of the person.
You're right.
And what they're about.
Because everyone is very different, race and all that aside.
Yeah.
But I guess moving forward here. Yeah, exactly. We're all individuals, you know what I mean? And I guess moving forward here too, one thing I did hear a lot of, but it's funny, I keep hearing that it's a failure, but I've never heard any supporting information but I kept hearing the term that Bidenomics is a complete failure. They must have said that a couple of dozen times. I mean, of course, it's Fox News. What do you expect, right? But at the same time, the reason why I bring it up is the question I bring is it, do you think it really is a failure?
I mean,
Yeah, I don't think it's a failure at all.
Me neither.
If you look at the, relative sort of debt increases for each president, let's see. Donald Trump increased the U.S. national debt by $8 trillion, right?
Trillion.
$8 trillion over his presidency.
Wow. That's the reason why I bring it up, because I could have swore a few of them candidates up there kept saying that the Republicans are the ones that minimize the debt, and that's their main objective, this, that, and the third. But it's funny, their actions, and when they actually get the power, they do the total opposite in the end.
Now, the numbers aren't complete for Biden because he hasn't completed his term.
Right.
But he is nowhere near that $8 trillion in increase.
No, and you also have to keep in mind the heap of debt he inherited from Trump, let alone post-COVID.
Right.
So,
I mean, we had a exacerbated COVID crisis due to Trump's negligence and pretending like the COVID crisis didn't exist and that it wasn't serious.
Right. It was a hoax at first,
so
remember?
we ended up having to spend more money than we probably would have. But regardless of that, the debt still did not increase more than it did under Trump.
Exactly.
So, Republicans like to play this game like, we hate debt, we hate deficits, we hate spending, but only when it's a Democratic president.
Right.
When it's a Republican president, we will fucking empty the fucking treasury and print money endlessly to support tax cuts and war.
Basically.
Now, I'll give Trump credit. He didn't, really start any large wars. Obama didn't either. We did inherit the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War from George W. Bush.
Right.
And so those require increased spending because war costs money.
Right.
We pay troops, we have to have munitions, we have to move weapons around. Like it costs money to conduct war. And whether that war is a good war or bad war or whatever, that costs money. But, to, I guess, his credit, Trump did not start any large-scale wars. Now, there is an argument that his appeasement sort of created the conditions where Putin could, start this war in Ukraine, which, either that was another topic of the debate, where should we help out Ukraine?
Right.
And I think Nikki Haley was strong in saying, yes, we should help out Ukraine. Putin is a dictator and a tyrant, and we allow him to take over Ukraine, then Poland is next. And
Exactly.
then a world war, because Poland is a NATO ally.
And I also liked how they mixed that topic with the border, almost like they had to choose. But luckily, she, among a few others, was like, well, why can't we do both? I mean, we've been doing both for quite some time. You know what I mean? So it's like, I just found it weird that they almost made it like you had to choose one.
And I actually wanted to chime in here, too, while we're still talking on Haley. One of the things that I wanted to talk about when you're talking about spending, she was one of the few that actually called out the GOP spending. She says that she wants accountability. I mean, she said a few other things that were kind of stupid, but at the same time, she did call out, like, yeah, we guys spent more money than the Democrats did. So it was interesting that she had that point out kind of in the first question.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, the wars that we fight as a nation, some of them may be good wars, some of them may be bad wars, but once we're in them to win. And you can't just like say like, oh, we're halfway in or whatever. Like, we can't let Putin just take over a country. Like, that's ridiculous.
Right?
We as the leader of the free world cannot just allow another country to violate the sovereignty of another nation.
Right. I mean, this country.
And if we do that, then we're fucked, because he will rebuild the Soviet Union, and we'll be in a situation where we have another Hitler on our hands.
I was going to bring that up because that's what it would pretty much turn into.
Then
Nikki Haley pointed out that he's a bloodthirsty murderer. Just on Wednesday, he murdered, or allegedly, I don't even want to say that, but like, he murdered Prigozhin, who was the leader of the Wagner group that was his mercenaries that he hired to attack Ukraine. Details are still coming out, and we don't have anything really confirmed, but his plane was at a safe altitude, and then it just plummeted after he left Moscow.
Right?
So,
isn't that ironic?
What do you think happened? Now, this guy Prigozhin led a coup against Trump, and not against Trump, excuse me, Putin. I'm sorry, I can get those two dictators confused. But he led a coup against Putin, and then said, "Oh, he called it off." Now, I feel bad for the guy, because even though he's a war criminal and a mercenary murderer, he fucked up. Like, when you take up arms against Putin, only one man was coming out alive in that situation, and he should have realized that.
Yeah.
And it may have taken a couple of months, but now he's dead, and Putin is stronger than ever.
Pretty much. And keep in mind, all of the killings and murderous moves that Putin has done. Let's keep in mind how much the ex-president used to praise Putin, too. Let's not overlook that. And I noticed a couple of candidates actually did bring that up, and I was actually very glad they did, just as a refresher. You know what I mean? Because this country tends to forget a lot. It could be something that just happened yesterday, too. You know what I mean? So by them bringing that up, it kind of reinforced that that was still a thing when there was actually video proof of him taking Putin's side over ours, not to mention. And I'm actually kind of glad we're on the Trump topic, because that's the next topic I wanted to bring up as far as the debate goes. When Trump's name came up, what were your guys' reactions to that?
The fact that Chris Christie came out the gate saying, like, we should not normalize this behavior. We need a president who has the decorum of a president, not some, random thug who says what he wants and does what he wants. And it was hard watching him be president, to besmirch the seat of president, whether it was Republican or Democrat. It's like, this is really ridiculous what we're watching right now.
You're not kidding. And one thing that really pissed me off was, I don't remember which one of the clowns up there said it, but one of those candidates said something while they were periods of time, they were all talking over one another. So you had to really almost pick and choose, because you couldn't really understand anything for a good portion of the entire debate. But someone said that they might even pardon Trump. That right there was like, wow, so he can do whatever the hell he wants, and this guy's just willing to let him. I
think it was Schwami.
I think you're right. I think it was him. But that blew my mind.
And even Pence, when he said, you know what, Trump is, subject to the rule of law, and he asked me to violate the Constitution. And I had hoped that it would be dealt with politically, but now that it's in, the legal realm, the law is going to have to decide whether to hold Trump accountable.
Right.
That was crazy.
And technically, I do 100% agree with what Rook said, because in a sense, even bringing up the concept of Trump almost disqualifies everybody that was on that stage on Wednesday. You know what I mean? But I do still respect the fact that Christie kind of spoke up against it. Pence held his ground and, said that he's not going to turn away from the Constitution. So he stood to protect it in his decision making. And even Nikki Haley had some words to say too. But
Yeah.
I noticed it was all quiet on the Western Front with everybody else.
Right.
Actually,
And that's great
Well,
that they've come around and they recognize what everyone else that wasn't a Trump sycophant noticed about Trump during, before his presidency and during his presidency and after his presidency before they were running, if they weren't running for president for 2024. Like everyone else told you that Trump was dangerous to this country. Trump, fomented an insurrection on the Capitol. He tried to prevent the peaceful transfer of power for the first time in our history.
Right.
He did delay it for the first time in our history. He asked the vice president to overturn an election. Like, if you at any point in time supported that man to be the leader of our country, your judgment is fucking terrible and you should be nowhere near that office.
Right. Couldn't have said it any better.
I'll say this, though. You guys are forgetting about Hutchinson. He was the only one that did not raise his hand when the moderator asked if Trump was convicted of a crime, would you still support him? And it was from all the way from the right all the way down to Christie. Everyone raised their hand one at a time. Christie was kind of late doing it, but he did it anyway. But
You're right.
Hutchinson, as the end, he never raised his hand, and he said it too. He was just like, I won't back Trump on this because he was all about the Constitution too, which was kind of weird because his other ideas were a little off cuff. But I have to give him credit for that. He definitely was not a Trump lover.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. He was the only one that actually. I mean, it's funny because at first nobody raised their hand, but then it seemed like it was a domino effect. The minute one person did, then another person, then another person. I'm like, wow, what are they just looking to see who's going to start the chain? And then I think even the moderator asked Christie because he held his hand up, but it was really low. But then I think when the moderator asked Christie, he said something about he was fumbling with something or I don't know, something on the podium. But I don't know if that was considered a hand raise, although it kind of did look like it at the last second there. But the bottom line is no one is above the law, regardless to anything. You know what I mean? So of course he's, allowed his fair trial or whatnot. You know what I mean? But if he's proven guilty on any of them, even if it's just one, you know what I mean? Then repercussions are coming, and that's the way it works. That's the way our system works. You know what I mean? So like, if you're still on that bandwagon for whatever reason, you can get mad all you want, but when you break the law, there's consequences that follow. And that's not a surprise. You know what I mean? Like we should know this. You know what I mean? Like this is not news. This is the way it's always been. Just I think this is the first time we've ever seen a presidential candidate to this extreme level do this. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's been Nixon and you know what I mean, but this is by far worse than that. So yeah, that's just where I kind of stand on that because my whole take too, because I didn't say too much earlier about my take on the whole thing as a whole. But my whole take on the whole thing was I was very not impressed with like the behavior of what was going on. It seemed like the moderators were like chaperones to children for a little while there, and they had to like even shut the audience up because it almost started like Jerry Springer after a while.
Yeah, it was a shit show.
It really was. Like,
and it shows that the Republicans are not ready to govern the country.
Exactly my point. Like it just shows that no one on that stage right now I think is better than Biden at this point because they're not ready. None of those candidates are ready.
We're not even talking about Biden. Like they are not ready to govern the country as a party.
I agree. I 100% agree. There wasn't one person on that stage. I mean, don't get me wrong. There was a couple of things but a handful of them, like Christie and Pence. There was some things they said that were, not, somewhat on the right track. But regardless to it as a whole, none of them are fucking ready for it. I'm sorry, not one of them. Yeah, not one. I'm sorry. I was not impressed, and I did not think that, like, it just looked like a circus, an American circus, and to think that this was on live television for the world to see, like, other nations see this, and they're probably like, what the fuck is going on over there? like, it just looks so, like, circusy is the best way I can word it, really. Even though it's not necessarily a word, but you know what I mean. Shit. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because my next question was going to be like, did you think any of these candidates really stood a chance?
Against Trump or against Biden?
I would
Yeah,
say,
that's what I'm-
for a lack of a better way for now, I guess against Trump, because they have to get past that to get to Biden.
Well,
As of
what are
now,
Republicans
no.
looking for? Yeah, because I don't think Republican voters are looking for, a logical person who wants to do something to better the country. They're looking for the loudmouth baby king, and that's basically it. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if Trump gets thrown in jail before election time comes around and gets disqualified, or if he ends up running from fucking prison. Should be interesting. But
I wonder about that theory of disqualification, because even if he was disqualified for running from office, or even if that theory was sound, who's going to enforce it?
Right. That's the $1 million question.
Is it the Supreme Court? Because
Yeah,
I
really.
think the Supreme Court would just say, fuck it, we're not getting involved.
Yeah, pretty much. Or they'll just pass it to someone else. Let someone else deal with this.
let Eileen Cannon deal with this. Yeah, let her deal with this. I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting come election time, or depending on what happens with these indictments for Trump.
And it's funny because I don't have anything offhand that I can say, but I'm sure we're going to revisit this, and we will be covering the future GOP debates too that are coming up in the next couple of months here. But I felt like I heard of a lot of opinionated stuff in the entire debate, and a lot of numbers were thrown and a lot of stuff, but there was no facts behind any of those numbers or any of those things they were saying. So sometimes, like, if you had someone that was watching this that was cloudy about the information, or, doesn't know everything about everything, especially when it comes to politics, when they throw those numbers out there to the average listener that's watching it, they're just numbers. Like, what facts do you have behind that to show that that's what it is, or the truth? And like, I get it. They only had like a minute or two apiece to actually speak. But if you're going to bring up actual numbers, you should bring up facts to follow that. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, you could be pulling that number out of your ass for all we know. You know what I mean? Like we were just discussing, like the Bidenomics, like it had a slow start, but you have to factor the massive amount of debt that the predecessor Trump gave him, not to mention post-COVID. You know what I mean? So there was a lot going on there, and it was just thrown into Biden's lap, and it was like, here you go, figure it out. And to tell you the truth, I think, granted the situation, he did a pretty bang-up job. Not for nothing. You know what I mean? And of course, if COVID was handled maturely and probably better, things could have been a little bit easier too. But that's the, going down memory lane kind of talk there, I guess. But bottom line, I don't know. I'm not looking forward to the next debate, but if it's anything like this one, they're just going to prove more that no one on that stage is ready to govern this country. Like, they're not. Bottom line.
Given everything that we're supposedly going to be looking forward to in the next debate, I think if there has to be a winner of tonight's debate, even though they're basically all losers anyway, I'm going to have to put my money on Christie or Pence. Pence did have a couple good jabs against Swami, which was, it was fun to watch. I mean, even though it's not the decorum of the room, and, everyone kind of had a little fun with it, but people going over the buzzer, and it was getting super annoying. But in the long run, I don't know. It definitely need to get rid of Trump as a candidate, because I don't know. It just, something doesn't feel right about it. This whole situation of, like, and the fact that every Republican is making so light of the situation, like, oh no, Trump shouldn't be trying to. It's a weapon. Everybody was weaponization of the DOJ, weaponization of the DOJ. What, like, so the DOJ can't do its job when it's against your people?
Right.
So I mean, that's the scary end of it. We need to get him at least accountable for what he did.
Right. That's the bottom line.
I would just say that I think Swami was also a quote unquote winner of the debate, because he got his name out there. People know who he is now, at least. I didn't fucking know who he was before tonight.
I agree too. But the only thing
he was loud and crazy enough to capture attention. So
that
he's
is
probably
true.
going to go up in the poll numbers a little bit.
Yeah, he put his mark. does he seem very far right compared to the rest? I mean, they all kind of.
Oh yeah.
But he sounds like
he's very far right.
Yeah, like he's
fucking
extreme.
insane.
Yeah, like that dude's out of his fucking mind, you ask me. But you're right. The craziness is going to bring up his numbers. That's what's probably going to happen. But like, that's, like some of the shit he was saying, like when he denied climate change, I think we talked about that earlier. When he brought that up, I'm just like, dude, really?
But you go back 4-8 years, Republicans all denied climate change too.
True.
Now they're coming around to it because, like the moderator said, young people, this is like their most important issue. And so they can't really ignore it anymore. So they have to just say, okay, I guess climate change is a thing, but, liberals are, taking advantage of it or whatever their fucking argument is. But
right.
Yeah, they tried to flip it on the Democrats. Like, oh, this was all their fault. And
it's like
China and India.
You that climate change was a thing. Like, you need to shut the fuck up now and save the planet.
Basically, I mean, factually, this past July was the hottest month ever recorded on Earth. Believe it or not, this past July, I'm pretty sure was the numbers. And I think up until this past July, every summer it just got hotter. So it just kept getting, you know what I mean? So if that isn't another red flag, like, come on, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you need like half the planet to just burn down for you to believe it. It'd be too late then, but
well, climate change is not just only about heat because it's about change in terms of our weather patterns. So it results in extreme climate differences like weather differences. So that could mean stronger hurricanes or hotter temperatures in some places, colder temperatures in other places. Like, it's just more extreme weather events more often.
No, this is what, as I know it, what would happen. With the climate change, the polar ice caps will be melting. And that's the main focus on it, because what that'll do is that'll decellulate the water, and all the main currents that roll under the oceans, like the East Australian current, all those currents will start changing direction. And when those things change direction, all the weather patterns that we've been experiencing for the last, 2-3 centuries or 2,000 years, all those weather patterns are going to change, and it's going to be extreme, and it's going to be violent. So it'll be, it'll be harsher hurricanes.
Right. We've
had lightning storms up the ass.
Like, we've had ice ages and shit on this planet, and we don't want to induce an ice age. Like, they may happen on their own, without human intervention, but we don't want to be the cause of an ice age or an extreme, heat wave that like burns up our planet. That's to the point where it's uninhabitable for humans. We don't want to be the cause.
Right. The object is to fix it before, we get there, because ignoring it isn't going to fix it, like.
Well, I mean, if things are melting in fucking Arizona, we're pretty close to the red line. I mean, that's kind of scary to fucking watch lights on a fucking car melt off the vehicle. It's crazy.
Yeah, and like you were saying with the storms, the hurricanes are getting worse. You know what I mean? The storms are getting worse. Tsunamis and stuff like that are going to be more likely. You know what I mean? Like, this all comes together. You know what I mean? In the end, this is all part of the same puzzle. And ignoring it is not going to solve the problem. That's what they did for the past 15 years or so. So now at least some of them are aware of the situation, but it's still, we got to be moving faster than we are. That's for sure.
Sure.
But that's all we got for this week. Strange Planet will have new episodes on YouTube every Friday. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.